morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this launch of the 2023 Climate Technology Progress Report. My name is Sarah Traerup, and I'm the Head of Technology Transitions and System Innovation at UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, and I will be moderating this event. We at the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, the UNFCCC Technology Executive Committee, and the Climate Technology Center and Network are pleased to present to you the 2023 Climate Technology Progress Report that will take stock of where we are at in enabling climate technology development and transfer. Before we delve into the report, I would like to mention a few housekeeping guidelines. Please use the dedicated question function that you will see on your screen to submit any questions you may have to the speakers, and we'll take them up during the question and answer session after the presentations. You can submit questions right away and throughout the session. The session is being recorded and can be accessed afterwards through the website at UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center. The event will last approximately 1 hour, and at least 15 minutes will be used for questions. We'll start our program with remarks from Stig Svenningsen, Chair of the UNFCCC Technology Executive Committee, and from Rajiv Garg, the Interim Acting Director of the Climate Technology Center and Network. Immediately after that, I will briefly introduce you to the overall report, and we'll have presentations of the main report findings from the lead chapter authors. After this, we'll have a Q&A session, and our speakers are joining from various parts of the world with various internet strengths. So if we have technical challenges, please do bear with us. So without further ado, I would like to invite Stig to take the floor. Please, Stig, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Dear participants, I extend a warm welcome to each of you to the launch of this Climate Technology Progress Report for 2023. And as Sarah said, this year's edition is called Speed and Scale for Urban System Transformation. And also, this event is co-organized by UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, the UNFCCC Technology Mechanism, which is consisting of the Technology Executive Committee, where I am the chair, and the Climate Technology Center and Network, where you will hear from Rajiv later. The focus of this year's report centers on climate technologies within urban and infrastructure systems. Specifically, it delves into case studies from Asia and showcasing robust synergies between mitigation, adaptation, and the substantial co-benefits for socio-economic development. This edition of the report is a collaborative effort between the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center and the UNFCCC Technology Mechanism. Our aim with this report is to enrich our comprehension of technological advancements and transfers, progress facilitation, and the need to bridge existing gaps. This understanding will aid decision makers in strategically aligning actions and investments. Furthermore, the report's insights are invaluable for discussions on the technology development and transfer within the UN Climate Convention and the Paris Agreement. Dear participants, the world is witnessing the escalating impacts of climate change, evident in rising temperatures and extreme weather events adversely affecting ecosystems, agriculture, and water resources. These challenges, if unattended, could worsen food insecurity, displacement, and economic instability. Thus, the call for innovative, science-driven, transformative solutions has never been more pressing. Innovative climate technologies play a pivotal role in addressing the climate crisis and are an integral part of the national climate strategies. Within the UNFCCC, the significance of technologies has gained consistent support from parties for over 2 decades now. Recent COP meetings underscored the importance of collaborative action in technology development and transfer for effective implementation of mitigation and adaptation measures. The upcoming conclusion of the first global stock lake will highlight the need for collective evaluation and targeted efforts to expedite necessary transformational changes in climate action. The latest IPCC report stresses the urgent need for a nearly 10% global annual emission reductions and the need to bolster resilience against climate change impacts. UNEP's emission gap report urges rapid societal transformation to achieve the Paris Agreement's temperature goals. UNEP and UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center have assisted nearly 100 countries since 2009 in identifying climate technology needs and formulating action plans for system transformation. The technical assistance provided by the Climate Technology Center and Network is instrumental in aiding countries in implementing these technologies, while the Technology Executive Committee supports countries in formulating policies for enhanced climate technology implementation. The current global pace and scale of action falls short in combating climate change. Although commitment to the Paris Agreement remains strong worldwide, an urgent acceleration of efforts is necessary. Governments must champion system transformations in the that integrate climate resilience and low greenhouse gas emission development. Rapidly scaling up the implementation and utilization of climate technologies is imperative. These technologies, beside addressing climate objectives, should generate significant system-wide co-benefits and align with local contexts. Strategic international cooperation on technology development and transfer is necessary in enabling the swift system transformation required. Cost reductions and increased funding for key technologies can facilitate wider deployment, especially in developing countries. I commend this report for its pragmatic approach, connecting real challenges with solutions applicable not only within the Asian region, but also beyond. And I also extend a warm thank you to all the contributors to the report. Thank you very much, and over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much for this, Stig. And now I would like to invite Rajiv Garg to take the floor, and I will present the rest of the speakers afterwards. Rajiv, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, on behalf of the CTC, a very warm welcome to all the participants to the virtual launch of the Climate Technology Progress Report for 2023. Last year, the Climate Technology Progress Report set out a framework and an approach for tracking and exploring trends in technology progress, which was focused on the Africa region on a specific, I think, the energy sector. This report in 2023 continues to explore the progress made and sets out analysis and case studies focused on urban transition in the context of Asia. This report is at appropriate time and corresponds to the release of the first Global Stocktech report and the IPCC 6th Assessment Report, both of which have underscored the urgency of addressing climate change and the role of climate technology. Technology plays a pivotal role in addressing global challenges, and this is also evident from the surge in the request for technical assistance, which is received by the Climate Technology Center and Network, which you all know is an implementation arm of the UNFCCC technology mechanism and supports developing countries through technical assistance and other services. In 2022-23 alone, we have received more than 300 technical assistance ideas from more than 110 countries, underscoring the indispensable contribution of technology in accelerating systems transformation. As Stig said, the 2023 UNEP emission gap report highlighted the devastating impacts of climate change, the deadly heat waves, droughts, wildfires, storms, and floods, and the global carbon dioxide emissions record highs make it clear that human-induced climate change is already costing lives and livelihoods. Against this backdrop, the urgency of taking system transformative climate actions has never been more pressing. Countries must accelerate innovative, sustainable, and context-specific solution to address the impacts of climate change, while at the same time developing systems and roadmaps towards long-term sustainable development. Probably in the next few sessions, the authors of the report are going to describe what is there in detail, but in summary, this report highlights some of the feasible technologies, institutional setup, innovative policies, financial mechanisms that can help help the countries to adopt specific actions in urban settings to mitigate the impact of climate change. CTCN is pleased to be a partner of UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center in bringing out this report. I take this opportunity to thank all the authors, reviewers, and editors for their immense contribution in producing this report. We look forward to continuing our partnership with UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center for further editions of these technology progress reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these words, Rajiv. As you can see here from our agenda on the first or the slide of the agenda for today, we will hear from a number of speakers who are part of the lead author teams for each of the chapters in the report. With us to present the chapter on feasibility, we have Dr. Deborah Lee, who is also a lead author of IPCC work. And Deborah works as an economic affairs officer at the UN Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean. For the same chapter, we also have Dr. Elizabeth Gilmore, who is an associate professor at University of Carleton, also a lead author for the IPCC. For our chapter on technology, innovation, and supporting infrastructure, we today have with us Jin Li, who is with Tsinghua University, where his work is focused on system modeling for climate goals. Then to present the chapter on governance and institutional settings, we have Dr. Lucas Somavilla, who is a researcher and strategist at University College London. We also have my colleague here, Senior Advisor Dr. Subhash Dar from UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, who will share insights from the chapter on policies and regulatory frameworks. And then finally, but not least, we have Dr. Peter Dupont, who is the co-founder and CEO of an Asia-based international consultancy, Asia Clean Energy Partners, but also the Asia coordinator from PFAN. I would also like to mention and express our appreciation to all of the 33 authors who have contributed to this report, as well as to our 12 steering committee members. All are listed in the report itself. So before we start with the chapter presentations, I will provide you with a short introduction to the report. Here you can see, and we've already heard that from Stig and Rajiv as well, that our ambition with this report series is to really bring more clarity on what leads to successful development and transfer of technology, and to the gaps and enablers in amplifying climate action. The ambition is to provide systematic and regular assessments of progress on technology development and transfer. And by this, we investigate various questions. We will look into what progress is made, what has enabled it, where are the gaps, and building on this understanding, how do we better enhance climate technology development and transfer? These questions may come across as very simple, but in reality, it's very complicated to answer. The report provides annual insights on climate technology progress, focusing on both industrialized and developing countries, providing both a local and global perspective. So on the report structure, this year the report is structured into two different parts. We have the first part, which is part A, that aims to give decision makers a kind of guidance at the global and regional level on ways to think about how the issues raised may apply in their context and how it may impact and can be used in their decision making. This is the part where we have it as feasibility assessment, and we will hear more from Deborah on this in a few minutes. So it gives policymakers at the global, regional, and national levels an idea of what's happening, how feasible could it be to implement certain technologies, which they can then use in their broad toolbox. It gives an indication of what are the issues and how do we think about this. The second part, part B, is sort of a continuation of part A, where we go into more details and look at how is the state of available technologies, where are we at with creating the institutions, the governance that facilitate technology transfer, and do we have the policies and regulatory frameworks in place, what more is needed. And then finally also, what is the state of the financial landscape for reaching speed and scale of climate technology implementation. In the report, we have taken a systems approach. It is now evident that to create the transformational change needed, there is a need for system transitions. And by this, we mean the process of changing from one state or condition to another in a given period of time, but with a focus on the system as a whole and not as standalone single interventions. The IPCC has highlighted various key system transitions. These include energy, industry, urban and infrastructure, land and ecosystems, and societal systems. The figure you see here illustrates the enabling conditions such as those addressed in the report, governance, policy, finance, and so forth, that we need for system transitions and for enhancing the speed and scale of climate technology implementation. As illustrated in this figure, technologies are embedded within or across systems. For this year's report, we focus on urban and infrastructure system transitions and discuss this through analysis of data and case studies from Asia. More than 56% of the world's population lives in cities and towns, and it's projected that in 25 years from now, 68% of the global population will be living in urban areas. In Asia particularly, this is expected to have a drastic effect on the changing dynamics of urbanization, where the urban population is expected to rise to 3.5 billion by 2050, which is approximately 1 billion more people than today in the urban areas. This will and requires multiple transformations, not just of the urban landscape as such, but also in associated services such as transport, energy provision, water, waste management, and so forth. So, without further ado, I would really like to invite Deborah to take the floor and present to us some insights from the feasibility assessment chapter in the report. So please, Deborah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning, good day to everybody. So I'm going to start off with a few key messages, and as Sarah mentioned, the feasibility assessment derives from the work done in IPCC's 6th assessment cycle, in which we look at the feasibility of options or technologies across 6 dimensions. So going beyond the technological and the economic ones, also including sociocultural, institutional, environmental, and geophysical. And as Sarah also mentioned, we take the system transitions approach to produce a holistic view of how discrete technologies work together to support the system transition. So even though these options are focused on urban system transitions, we also show the linkages to the different system transitions Sarah just showed. And what we can find is that there is strong evidence for highly feasible technologies, but we find the most challenges or gaps or barriers in the social, cultural, and institutional dimensions that can hinder the progress of some of these technologies. We also reveal, the feasibility assessment also reveals gaps in the desirability of technologies such as nature-based solutions and the need to strengthen institutional indicators. We also carry out an analysis of synergies and trade-offs between adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development goals, in which we find high synergies with these technologies, in which, of course, the role of the different enablers mentioned and that will be presented later are needed to enhance these synergies. So what we can see here in this table are groups of discrete technologies and how they come together to meet adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable goals. And these technology groups were chosen because they prioritize equity as a critical component of climate action. So we work on water management, looking at green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, and other solutions such as permeable pavements and rainwater harvesting. Then we look at public transport, focusing on mass transit, building, cooling, different options that are a mix of gray infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Social housing, focusing on resettlements, improvements, and regulations. And finally, energy distribution and generation, looking at energy reliability, infrastructure, resilience, and on-site generation. So what we can see throughout this mix is how the equity component comes in to try to have more inclusive solutions. And what we can see in the next slide then is are the feasibility scores for the different options. So as mentioned earlier, we use the feasibility assessment framework from the IPCC, in which each dimension has between 4 and 5 different indicators that show the different breadth and depth of what the different dimensions should mean. So for example, under social cultural, we have intergenerational equity, gender equity, different inclusiveness, and acceptance. For example, under institutional, we include political acceptance and the existence of different types of, for example, regulations and policies to support the technology. So the bigger the circle, the more feasible, the higher feasible the option is. And what we can find here throughout is that there is strong evidence for highly feasible technologies in urban systems. But what we can see also in the last 2 segments of this table is that social, cultural, and institutional indicators or dimensions have medium to low feasibility, which then indicates that there are more barriers or information gaps that need to be addressed. What we can see now in this next slide on cooling, on building cooling technologies, is that we were in the assessment we separated nature-based solutions from gray infrastructure, at least for the mitigation side. And here we can see the gaps between the desirability of technologies. So at least on the side of adaptation, we find medium to high feasibility throughout most of the indicators and dimensions. And for mitigation, at least for some of them, like we can find more of the different gaps and see a clear difference in the assessment between nature-based solutions and gray infrastructure. So this highlights also the need for future assessment on nature-based solution that has high synergies between mitigation and adaptation. So what we can see here is this synergy, but of course there's still some more gaps on the side of the mitigation assessment. And here in this slide, we can see the analysis of trade-offs and synergies with the different not only between mitigation and adaptation, but also with the sustainable development goals. And what we can see is high synergies, especially with the sustainable development goals, 7 on energy, 11 on sustainable cities and communities, but also we have with SDG 3 on health and SDG 6 on water. This doesn't mean that there aren't synergies and trade-offs or high synergies with other SDGs, but these are the ones where there are the more direct synergies. And these synergies, the identification of synergies and co-benefits can increase perceptions of desirability and increase opportunities for economic benefits and enhance equity. So to finish in this next slide, we can see how the system transitions come together. And when we place the 5 technologies within the 5 system transitions mentioned earlier, and see the role of societal transitions and how society as a whole can push the path forward on how these technologies are implemented, we encompass all of the technologies that creates a better understanding of their roles within climate resilient development pathways, and which we hope that with this methodology, we show not just the feasibility of technologies as standalones, but how they fit in together within groups of technologies and also within the system transitions. So just to close, when we talk about climate resilient development, is that we are seeking climate actions that are sustainable, that interconnect economic, social, ecological processes and considerations, but also that are transformative and that show a fundamental change in systems with impacts that shifts and accelerate the trajectory of progress towards climate neutral, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable development pathways. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deborah, much appreciated. So jumping to the next chapter, which will be presented by Jin Lee, we will hear more about technology innovation and supporting infrastructure and the state of this. So please, Jin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everyone. I'm Jin from Tsinghua University. It's truly an honor to provide a concise overview of Chapter 3, Technological Innovation and Supporting Infrastructure. First, I must extend my gratitude to my co-author, Dr. Can Wang from Tsinghua University, W. Seligson from Villanova University, USA, and Amy Wu from the National Institute of Green Technology, Korea. Previous chapter highlights the economic feasibility of certain climate technologies, and our focus here is on the urgent need for integrated technological innovation across pivotal domains. We center our attention on urban climate technology innovation as the crucial role of the supporting infrastructure. Displayed on the right is the framework of this chapter. We begin by summarizing 5 critical areas for urban climate technology: buildings, transportation, energy supply, water system, and urban planning. Subsequently, we explore the key requirements for technological innovation in each domain, emphasizing the role of supporting infrastructure. Moreover, we highlight the synergistic benefits of climate technology, such as energy advancement, pollution control, economic development, and innovation incentives. We also select 2 cases from Global South, that is Shenzhen and Cambodia, to emphasize the importance of regional strategies to foster the technological innovation. And as the next page, we can find a table. It's our exploration into urban climate technology innovation requirements. And in the urban building system, the future innovation of low carbon and resilient construction material is to enhance material performance and to find alternative technologies. Renewable energy integration will require to enhance energy conversion efficiency and design self-sustaining structure. As a future research direction for buildings, energy efficiency technology is to enhance system connectivity and increase heat pump performance. As for the urban transportation system, the focus of transition is vehicle electrification and intelligent transportation. Vehicle electrification requires next generation batteries and more fast charging stations. Intelligent transportation requires seamless integration technology. In the field of urban energy supply system, we need Internet of Things and big data technology for urban energy management and optimization, stable grid and resilient supply for smart grid. In the urban water system, the key points lie in the smart water management, water recycling and reuse system, and stormwater management solution. The technology innovation for these domains include real-time data processing, multi-parameter sensors, the enhancement of energy efficiency, energy recovery, optimal stormwater retention, and natural-based solution. The final area is urban planning, which includes climate mitigation or adaptive urban planning, urban modeling, and simulation. The future technological innovation lies in advanced modeling software, participatory planning, enhancement of durability, predictive modeling, climate projection, and VR technology. Some of these technologies focus on mitigation, some on adaptation, and some on both mitigation and adaptation. Okay, as the next page, I would say the technological advancement depends not only on the technologies research and development, but also on the support provided by urban infrastructure. The left table summarizes the typical urban infrastructure to foster the deployment of climate technology. In transportation, urban infrastructure that require accelerated deployment include sustainable public transit, charging facility, non-motorized transport infrastructure, carpooling, and ride-sharing initiatives. In the building sector, we need more green buildings, energy-efficient system with management facility. In the energy sector, we need more renewable energy sources, smart grid, and energy storage. In the wastewater system, we need more advanced water treatment plants, purification facilities, interconnected pipelines, and reservoirs. Another point is that understanding other synergistic benefits arising from urban climate technologies can also serve as a powerful motivator for local governments to proactively promote their adoption. In the energy sector, some energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies can give lower energy bills or improve energy independence. In the pollution control system, some technologies like sustainable transportation can simultaneously improve air and water quality. Some emerging sustainable technologies can also bring more green jobs or provide economic growth. And high-tech climate technology can also bring more innovation and research motivation. All right, that covers the main point of chapter 3. Because of time limit, I want to be going to another details like the case studies or 2 cases in the global source. If you are curious, you can find all the information in our report. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jen, and much appreciated. And yes, I would encourage everyone to have a look at the chapters where, of course, much more details and information can be found. Also, of your really thorough walk through these technologies and what's further required. So thank you very much. And with this, I would like to invite Lucas to share some insights with us on the governance and institutional settings chapter. Please, Lucas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning to everyone. And thanks to UNFCCC, the TEC, and CTCN for inviting me to be part of this important event today. In today's chapter, we're going to cover the institutional settings and governance, looking at case studies from Asian cities. So thanks so much. The first slide refers to a few key things. We often think about the need to deploy climate technology solutions at scale, but understanding the institutional settings and the governance processes involved in the deployment and transfer of climate technologies is critical if we are to advance solutions for both low carbon as well as climate resilient development in the context of Asian cities. So creating the appropriate enabling environment for the development and transfer of climate technologies becomes imperative. This requires, of course, to unpack, as well as Deborah was mentioning on the feasibility assessment, also include the social, political, as well as the institutional, regulatory and financial dimensions that play a key defining role in shaping the ability of the national actors who have to implement these projects into successfully produce governance processes for addressing technological change. In the case of urban systems, that can fundamentally change towards, they have the potential to change towards more sustainable modes of production and consumption. This required appropriate innovations that can emerge from and become mainstreamed in the market and wider economic systems. And in order to do so, these innovations that could include climate compatible technologies also need to take into account more nuanced social practices and understand better the enabling environment in terms of business models and governance mechanisms and regulatory structures. So as you can see, the Asian member states on the previous slide, thank you. The Asian member states levels of urbanization have grown tremendously, and there is increased projection of the total urban population growth by 2030 will continue to increase. By 2030, the Asian population is estimated to be almost 405 million people. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a brief, very quick overview of some of the cases that we look for this chapter. The first case is on mitigation, and it's about scaling up processes of CNG buses in Semarang in Indonesia. This was an initiative to transition from conventional diesel to hybrid compressed natural gas, or CNG, hybrid diesel buses for the mass transport system. Was implemented in Semarang city between 2013 and 2022. Semarang city, as a governance unit, was able to leverage multiple partnerships and combine resources to create an enabling environment for sustainable transport in the city. And through the engagement with regional as well as international networks and platforms that specialize in providing climate technology solutions, and expertise was essential in this case. An important element to consider in this case is that the process for adopting the CNG buses and mainstreaming the technology in the city took about 10 years. So when we think about transformations, it's really important to think about also all the steps that need to be considered in reaching out and implementing these technologies. Particularly in this case, how the stakeholder synergies were built, how the technology was incorporated as part of the greening city strategy, and how the piloting of the hybrid buses and testing of the market was conducted before the full scale of the transition could actually take place. The second case is a cross-cutting case from Melaka, Malaysia, that is focused on Green Climate Action Plan. The Malaysian case study has shown the importance of the role of sub-economic regional bodies, in this case, the Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand Growth Triangle, which provided a sub-regional framework for accelerating economic cooperation in the three countries and promoting institutional governance to increase the different complementarities and advantages between the three cities. They also encourage processes such as city twinning, which is city-to-city agreements to share lessons during the implementation stages, and as a result, multiple partnerships with international organizations, donors, at various levels of governance were developed. The third case is on adaptation, where we looked at water resource management in Thai cities. We know that water-related management challenges in Thai cities are increasingly problematic and arise from compounded multiscalar issues of institutional structures that affect urban and water governance. In the past decade, the rapid urbanization of Thai cities has driven drastic land use changes, transforming rural but also agricultural and green spaces in the built environment. The case study shows that water resources and water-related disaster risk management are increasingly complex, with the challenge of climate uncertainty and urban dynamics requiring to revise institutional and governance approaches to water management in Thailand. It is key that approaches and solutions need to move beyond just the technology transfer aspect, but also include strengthening institutional capacity to be able to apply these technologies into integrated water resource governance. In the next slide, I provide some key recommendations. First of all, there is a need to increase further understanding of creating institutional flexibilities, creating institutional adaptability, and proactive governance, which is seen to be key to navigate cities' systemic transformation. This requires a combination of stronger governance tools on the one end to inform policy development, such as city-level climate technology strategies, setting up priorities that are realistic and that can be measured against robust targets. There is an additional component, which is the softer governance tools that include creating spaces for more open dialogues and build trust and transparency by listening to a diversity of perspectives from various stakeholders. There is a need to increase governance arrangements at city level that, with a view to seek coherence and integration via synergies and interlinkages between existing institutions and emerging actors and players. This will help catalyze accesses to public and private resources and nurture partnerships potential. There is a need to also think about increasing local leadership and stewardship, which will play a fundamental role. This could be pursued by enhancing and supporting the dedicated champions that understand context-specific institutions and governance in countries. And finally, to pursue a whole governance systems approach that include both vertical as well as horizontal components of governance that are fit to deliver climate technology solutions to multiple stakeholders in a just and equitable manner. Back to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucas, for sharing these insights and also for bringing some of the case studies to us here. So thank you for that. Now I would like to invite Subhash Da to share some findings from the Policies and Regulatory Frameworks chapter. Please, Subhash, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and I would like to thank the organizers, CTC and UNFCCC, for giving this opportunity. And I'm presenting this chapter on behalf of our authors, which are Meenal Pathak from Ahmedabad University, Talat Munshi, my colleague here at UNFCCC, and Shaurya Orgin from the Ahmedabad University. Now this chapter, in some sense, comes towards the end, and it would look into three different, you can say, policy messages from the chapter. The first thing which I would dwell into is that what we are seeing, and this was evident also from the earlier chapters, that in terms of the climate technologies, we have a number of technologies which have become, you can say, commercially viable or are cost competitive in many countries now, especially developed countries. For example, this graph on the right-hand side, it is trying to show you the transition which is happening on the solar PV side. And the costs have gone down, and if we look at the total cost of ownership of this technology, it is cost competitive to conventional technologies. But at the same time, when we look back at the developing countries, we still see that though there is a scale up, but the speed and scale of implementation is not what is needed. And there are multiple, you can say, barriers which these technologies face, especially in developing countries. And we were looking at from the Asian context. And here we could see that a number of countries face this issue with respect to financing. And there are, I would say, two kinds of issues here. One is the inherent higher cost of capital in these countries, which can create a big barrier for these technologies. The other is the, you can say, the appetite of the financial community to extend loans and the appetite for risk in these countries, which is creating a barrier. Many of these countries, some countries in Asia are quite big, so they don't face this barrier, but many countries in Asia are also quite small and they don't have you can say, the manufacturing capacities or value chains for the technologies within their countries. And this can create variety of, you can say, barriers for the technology within the country in terms of, you can say, creating inadequacy of solutions which are relevant for the countries, and also the cost. The technologies can be more expensive, especially we work in, for example, in the TNA project in a number of Pacific countries. So therefore, when we look at the cost of the technology, they're quite high as compared to what you can see in larger markets. Within the countries itself, you can see that, and this was also something which came in the earlier chapter, about creating those enabling conditions within the institutional frameworks within the countries. And here we find that in terms of, for example, regulations and policy, you can say, and a very stable policy environment, which can give a signal to the private sector to invest, is not there. And finally, within these countries, there are also these challenges in terms of the technical capacities for installing these systems, operating and maintaining these systems. And lastly, because most of the developing countries have low per capita income, so affordability of for these technologies is also a challenge in these technologies. Now, in my next slide, I try to look at what can cities do, because a lot of the policy setting or creating an enabling framework for these technologies sometimes happen at the national level. A lot of policy making is at the national level, but at the same time, cities and local governments play a very important role in the adoption and scale up of technologies. First and foremost, a lot of the interventions, for example, the land and infrastructures which would need to be created for the technology adoption, is something within the domain of the cities. For example, I work on the transport sector a lot, so I can take this example of, for example, if we are talking of EV as a technology, it requires public charging. And even before public charging, you require some parking policies. All these things, creating an infrastructure for charging at the urban level, city level, or creating parking policies, all within the domain of the city governments and local governments. Third thing is that, and this was again came up earlier also in presentations, is that setting an ambition and target for the technology. So this gives some kind of a clarity at what goal we are pursuing, and many cities are now trying to do that, and we will see on the right hand side I have some case study from Seoul also there. And then lastly, cities need to think a little bit in an integrated fashion rather than thinking with this project kind of thinking. So trying to link across different interventions. For example, we may have interventions related to green buildings. We have something going on the zero energy buildings or nature-based solutions. How do can we connect it for delivering a particular service? If, for example, if we are thinking of giving more efficient cooling, so there might be something within all three different domains which can be brought into play here. And on the right, I just provide this, we have in the chapter, and you can read in the chapter a number of case studies which has been done. And here, just to make the point that what cities can do, and there is this example of what Seoul has done for the rooftop solar program by allocating municipal lands for large-scale solar power generation, and public buildings were mandated to install solar PV systems, and all this can give a lot of, you can say, support for the technologies. Now, in the next slide, I try to now look at, okay, doing this scale up for technologies, what would the cities gain from this? Now, if there can be many, you can say, benefits the cities can gain, but in Asia, for example, air pollution is a very big problem, and again connected to the transport, because transport is one of the largest contributors of, you can say, pollutant load for these cities. And climate change, if we are thinking of scaling up technologies which can address the climate change problem, and this was also mentioned about the mass transit could be an option here, electric vehicles could be an option here, but if we implement these technologies through more, you can say, for example, when we're talking about public transport systems, in developing country cities, we have also not a very equitable use of space in the cities. And on the right hand side, for example, here I'm trying to show what kind of inequitable space allocation is across various modes. Modes of transport such as walking, cycling, they don't even get like a 2% space or road space for. So if we can create better infrastructures for walking, cycling, we are creating a better access for public transportation at the same time. Similarly, we would have a lot of solutions for example, in the transportation space are local. For example, it is not necessary to think with the same, you can say, lens which we use for the developed countries, because when we talk of electrification in Asia, a lot of cities have already a lot of e-rickshaws, e-buses, and e-scooters coming into play. So we can use these modes of transport rather than focusing on cars and on those technologies which are facing some kind of headwinds in terms of implementation, and these can itself deliver us a lot of benefits. There could be actually a lot of other co-benefits for the cities from this climate action, like creating more equitable cities. For example, this came out from my earlier slide on the right hand side. If we can redistribute the road space across the different modes of transportation, we can have much more cooler cities. For example, in this chapter we talk also about nature-based solutions and how they can, if they are integrated with cooling solutions, we can also create less urban heat island effects and have more cooler cities. If we are talking about promoting more renewable energy solutions, more electric vehicles, more efficient vehicles, we are also at the same time helping in improving the energy security for the cities. And finally, a lot of these solutions can create more livable cities, more walkable cities, and in the sense, more active cities and more healthy citizens. And there is more you can read in the chapter. Thank you. And I hand over back to Sarah with this.
Thank you so much, Subhash. And then without further ado, and I think you sort of also made bridge to the next chapter presentation, Subhash, I would like to invite Peter Dupont to share some insight from the climate finance chapter that we also have in the report. So please, Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and good to see you. And thanks to the UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center and to my co-authors, Peter Story, Nancy Nguyen, and Pamela Deka. So I'm the Southeast Asia Regional Coordinator of something called PFAN, which is the Private Financing Advisory Network, and it's a network of more than 300 clean energy, climate, and business experts around the world, with about 60 or 70 of those being across Southeast and South Asia, which I will talk about now. Our chapter is based on experience over the past 15 years in coaching small and medium energy projects and helping them to access finance. It builds on the review of innovative climate technologies that Jin Lee presented in chapter 3, and also on the discussion of chapter 5 that Subhash just made about the policy and regulatory challenges of innovative technologies for cities. So first, this slide here just shows, I mean, these numbers are so big it's impossible to really get your head around it, but there's a need for somewhere in the range of $2 to $3 trillion a year of investment into climate mitigation and adaptation technologies. This shows an approximate breakdown of the amounts for different infrastructure systems or areas. Some people put the amount as high as $8 trillion. Suffice to say that we need to increase the speed and scale of what we're doing in this area of investment by at least 4 to 5-fold in order to meet the Paris targets. And that's quite daunting. And as we've heard from some of the other speakers, the institutional and other challenges often delay the ability to get the projects implemented. Next slide, please. So these are some of the main challenges, and there's a lot here. And I'll just give you a little flavor from sort of that we highlight in the chapter. So for example, first, issue is being able to access finance. The cost of capital is a big issue in a lot of countries in developing Asia. If you have a good project, often there's this mismatch between the language you speak as a project developer and the language that investors speak. That's a big issue. A lot of the project developers that we have worked with, when we look at their business proposals, often really do not appreciate the project and technical risks, and these are big issues for investors. The higher upfront costs are obvious. I would say that just the complexity, especially of small and medium climate and clean energy projects in urban environments, really are things that investors don't like. They like standardization and clarity. So Subhash just talked quite a bit about the policy and regulatory barriers, and I'll just mention that, example, where I live in Southeast Asia, right now I'm at in Manila in the Philippines. Huge problems if you're trying to mobilize capital across multiple Southeast Asian countries because of the different regulations in the PPAs, the power purchase agreements, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what the pricing is, feed-in tariffs, and things like that. And finally, I guess I'll just mention about revenue generation, that the ability to have actual confidence in revenue generation is often very limited, and that limits the ability of the investors to provide project finance. And if you can't provide project finance, then you're down to balance sheet finance, which would only benefit those companies that already have a good asset basis. Next slide, please. So these are a mix of financing approaches and instruments that we examine in the chapter. The first three are really financing approaches or mechanisms. The last five are areas that are of interest and sort of breakout areas like electric mobility, circular economy, where it's important to be able to have solid business models in order to be able to get access to finance and scale up implementation in urban environments. So in the chapter, we explore a number of case studies where we have helped to companies to successfully invest, and we'll go to the next slide and I'll wrap up. There is more in the there's a bit more in the chapter, and if anyone is interested, they can actually obviously contact us. But for example, I'll just give 2 or 3 examples. So Celex is a company in Vietnam that makes electric motorcycles. They have some very sort of advanced technology. When we first met them in about 2018, 2019, they were doing their first capital raise. I met yesterday with the Asian Development Bank, who is now participating in their 3rd capital raise. So they're in Series A. I think they're raising something like $5 or $10 million. So that's just one example. that's for the urban areas such as Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi and Da Nang, where these bikes are really starting to take off and would really make a dent in sort of urban pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. National Housing Authority is the agency that builds tens of thousands of units of affordable housing for low-income people across Thailand, working with the Asian Development Bank. They were successfully able to issue the first green bond for affordable housing in Thailand, and that's really sort of a landmark in the region. Some of these other examples here, cover everything from logistics to water to solar rooftops, which I mentioned earlier. That's worth a brief mention. This company, Fourth Partner in India, has been able to really have a breakout success across India and is now expanding into other countries because they've developed a very sort of solid and systematic way of delivering solar rooftop and financing it in a sort of a packaged manner. So with that, I'll wrap up and look forward to any questions. And it's a privilege to be associated with this report launch. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Peter. And again, I would encourage everyone to have a closer look at the chapter in the report, which also have much more details. And thanks for sharing some highlights here. Thank you also to all of the speakers for your presentations, your work on the report, and the reflections on your findings. Now I will just take a few questions that we have received. So I would like to invite all our speakers to turn on your cameras, so it's not only me that we can see here. So while you turn on your cameras, I would like to pose, I have a question here for Deborah. Deborah, can the feasibility assessment approach, or can the feasibility assessment be an approach to economic development? And if you could please explain how communities, policymakers, actors in general can be more engaged, if so, in the feasibility assessment process. So Deborah, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So the answer is yes, because it helps direct resources into technologies that meet multiple goals. So as we could see, we work not only across the 6 dimensions, but also look at mitigation, adaptation, and the different sustainable development goals. And one thing that's different from this report than was done in IPCC's 6th assessment cycle is that we use the same group of technologies and assess both for both mitigation and adaptation. Whereas in IPCC, we have a set of adaptation technologies and a set of mitigation technologies in which we do the synergies and trade-offs. So here we take one group of technologies, for example, public transport, and see what it means for adaptation and what it means for mitigation. So we can start exploring more of those connections there. For the second part of your question, I think there's a greater understanding, as can be seen from all the different presentations on the enablers, that we really need to go beyond the technological and economic dimensions that usually frame feasibility assessment. When we talk about financing, for example, of projects, the main components are, is it cost effective? Is the technology robust? So here we start seeing, we know the importance of these other technologies. So when we talk about communities, for example, is how can we target more of their own priorities? What are the specific social-cultural contexts that, for example, Lucas also mentioned during governance, and how these play a role. But I think also for policymakers, it's important because we can see here that in the synergies and trade-offs, we can identify at an early stage what are the potential barriers and put in resources for these specific barriers instead of for whole dimensions, or saying, oh, these technologies are too complicated, let's move on to something else, when there are very discrete interventions that can be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this, Deborah. Maybe I have a question for you, Peter, also. So Peter, on finance, we have the UN climate negotiations starting next week. And there's always lots of discussions around finance, also for technology transfer. Large-scale investments for upscaling technology implementation requires mobilization of finance from the private sector. Do you have any key recommendations to parties in terms of, how can we stimulate private sector investments in the whole technology transfer and implementation? This is a very broad question. So if you have any, silver bullets for, how can we stimulate the private sector investments? I think you touched upon that briefly in your intervention already, but perhaps you can elaborate a bit.
Yeah, well, actually, Sarah, it's a great question. It is, I think, manageable in a bite-sized chunk. I've happened to have spent this week at the Asian Development Bank, and I'm working with ADB's private sector department, helping them with their climate finance plan. So it's very good timing for that question. So ADB's, the Asian Development Bank covers all of Asia, developing member countries, and they have a target by 2030. So in the 11-year period from 2019 to 2030 of $100 billion of climate finance. So that covers mitigation and adaptation. For the private sector arm of ADB, it's only 12 billion. They have about 10% of their staff is private sector, but they intend to scale that up to be a much larger share. And so what we're working with them on is discussing internally barriers of how to do that. So briefly, I would say a few things. One, I mean, it's the obvious thing, and Subhash talked about this, and is, the sort of policy and regulatory barriers. But the obvious thing is to sort of develop climate-friendly policies that reduce, that sort of facilitate access to finance and simplify procedures for banks and investors to be able to understand and invest in projects. One of the things we've been talking to the ADB about is developing products. So for example, they haven't done much in buildings, but IFC has done a lot in buildings. So that's an area where if you have a product, a green building product, and you can go to the market with it, and you have ways of certifying that buildings or groups of buildings are meet green criteria, then you can mobilize more financing. Another one, and I'll stop there, is actually, it's interesting, a little bit sort of, I mean, it's sort of obvious, but give more money to financial institutions. So if you have a big agency like Asian Development Bank, they can make a loan of hundreds of millions of dollars to banks or a bank or commercial banks, and set up green lending facilities targeted at the private sector. That's sort of obvious. It could be done more, and it is a way of getting the decision making down to the people who are trained at evaluating transactions and being able to move that money. So I don't know if that's sort of catching the tip of the iceberg, but clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The problem is generally not a lack of private sector capital. There's lots of money. I think we all know that. This is how you mobilize it and how you originate good projects. Thank you.
Thank you for that and sharing these thoughts and information, I would say. So I would just we're running out of time, but I just have one question more I would like to ask, and that's addressed to you, Lucas. So system transformations may open up many opportunities, but rapid change can also be disruptive. Do you have any reflections on this? Not least in light of what can be done through governance, institutional interventions. So I could ask you to reflect a bit on this question, Lucas, or these questions.
Thanks very much, Sarah, for this really important question. I'll try to be brief in the interest of time. But really, when we try to think about the system transformation issue, we also need to scale it down to the transition processes. And there is something really interesting about the sort of triple inequality that define climate action today. The first is the disparity in the responsibility for producing the problem in the first place. Then there is the disparity in experiencing the impacts of the climate crisis. And then there is the disparity in the availability of resources and for mitigation and adaptation projects that required significant support and cooperation. In the context of institutions and governance, what we see at the country level is sometimes a lack of capacity to address things like information asymmetries and fragmentation. And I think Peter made a point also in the lack of trust and the high cost of capital that affects the development and transfer of technologies that often have to do with the fact that, for example, there is lack of coordination between ministries of finance and ministries of environment that affects the ability of producing real bankability of projects that are coherent at a national level. So really understanding these barriers and build such an institutional capacity will help increase the bankability and create an enabling environment to eventually bring down the cost of capitals and create trust also from the various financiers. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Lucas. Important points also to keep in mind going forward. So thanks a lot, everyone. I would like to mention before we close our event that the report is now available on the UNEP CCC website, on the CTCN website, and will also be made available on the UNEP CCC TT Clear website of the tech. So you can find the report on those 3 websites. Thank you very much, everyone, on behalf of us, UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center, on behalf of CTCN and the tech. We're very happy that you joined this event. So thank you to all the speakers and all the participants that we have here with us today. So have a pleasant day, all of you, and thank you so much.